Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in. This is Shaminder, and in today's video, I'm going to query Azure Data Lake storage that houses Synapse data using GitHub Copilot CLI. So in the last video that I did, I covered the setup of connecting to ADLS via DuckDB. We created a script that looks through model.json that contains common data model schema, and it particularly extracts out attributes, partitions, and from there it then goes back to those partitions and pulls the data and then give us a way to query that data using SQL. So if you haven't checked that out video, go look at it because it covers the end-to-end process and what goes under the hood when you configure Synapse Link. Now, in this video, what we are going to do is I've created a plugin that GitHub Copilot CLI will recognize. And in that plugin, I have a skill where I have listed down all the steps that we did manually to query ADLS. So those steps are now part of our skill. And when GitHub Copilot CLI loads that plugin into its context, then any query that we execute in natural language that pertains to ADLS or DuckDB, the GitHub Copilot CLI would recognize that, okay, the user is trying to query ADLS using that skill. So it'll load those instructions and then process those instructions step by step. So let's take a look at the skill. So all the steps that we did in the last demo, they are coded into this skill. It first evaluates the user's operating system to see, okay, whether DuckDB, Azure CLI, all the prerequisites are installed or not. If not, then it'll ask for installation. And at every step, if it's going to execute something in command line or terminal, it'll ask the user permission. And this is where the user will get a chance to review that, okay, the actions that the CLI is taking, they make sense. Let me approve it and let it do its job. Okay. So yeah, so this skill is available locally under a plugin. Now what I'll do is I will start Copilot CLI, and um, I've already connected the Copilot to my GitHub personal account. I did so by creating an environment variable and specifying my PAT token over there. So now when I use Copilot and if I don't even log in, it recognizes that, okay, the user has already configured the environment variable that has PAT. So I'll establish the secure connection with that GitHub and pull the models from that GitHub subscription. Yeah. Okay, so we'll set up the debug mode just so that we can see what it does behind the scene. Yes, I trust this folder. And over here, you see it has loaded my plugin because I already added that. Uh, Right, so that's my plugin DB Synapse ADLS that we saw in Visual Studio Code. Now, if we look at the skills, it has that DuckDB query ADLS skill, which would enable Copilot CLI to compare the incoming prompt with the name and the description of that skill and then pull the instructions from there. Okay, so what I'll say now is query contact from ADLS via the DB. Perfect. Right. So it recognized our plugin, it recognized the skill, and now it's asking me a series of questions. And in those questions, it's basically expecting the information that it needs to run that skill. The first one is the storage account name. Now it needs to know the container. Okay, So this is where it's now going through the instructions step by step, and at every instruction step, if there's anything that it will execute in the terminal, it'll ask for permission. And only if the user grants that permission, then only it'll go ahead. Otherwise, it'll stop the execution there itself. Okay, I'll let it run and pause the video. And once it has processed everything, I'll showcase the steps that it took. All right, so it has completed its processing. Now let's review what it has done so far. Um, so over here it said, okay, the contact data is loaded. Now let's view some records. It pulled the records, it's checking the schema, and then it gave a summary that it connected to the ADLS using DuckDB with CLI credential, chain authentication, that was the storage account. It created that snapshot table, total contact loaded 12 records, total columns 307. And then, yeah, these are some key columns over here. Uh, the next thing it does is, yeah, the next thing that I told it to do is that, okay, give me the records where the name contain Yates. So this is where it looked at the data that was extracted and it found these two records for us. Now I did all of this with my personal subscription that doesn't have any paid models. So I'm using the free models that come with the GitHub Copilot CLI. So it works with these as well. Yeah. All right. That's what I wanted to. Oh, actually, there's one more thing I want to show you. Now we can look at the logs. Okay. So since I started it in the debug mode, I can see, what's going behind the scene. And look at the actions that GitHub Copilot CLI did while invoking the LLM and what basically it passed as an instruction to the LLM. So over here, if I see this is where it started my session that's saying it recognized that I have a GitHub token, and then going down, going down, going down, going down. Yeah, that's my model. Okay, so that's what I wanted to showcase you. So this is what it sent to the GitHub Copilot API that hosts these LLMs behind the scene. And then within this, then it basically, continues its interaction with that model. Now over here we see it has the model properties, that what model I used. And if I go down, yeah, this is where it's now embedding the skills as part as function calls. So essentially what it is doing behind the scenes is function calling only. So it's basically telling to the LLM that I have these functions available with me. Now from the given prompt, if at any point you feel like this function has to be invoked, let me know and I'll invoke that for you. So this is the Copilot CLI behind the scene, right? So what it is doing is it's basically publishing these functions as tools to the LLM, and then all the LLM is doing is invoking it. Okay, let's go down and see where it published our skill. So what's the skill? Invoke the PDF skill. No, that's not ours. Execute SQLite. That is not ours. These are all out of box as of now. Okay, this is again out of box. Okay, let's to search ADLS. Okay, so this is what I said in my first prompt, that I want to query contact from ADLS via DuckDB. And then now let's look at the reasoning of it. Yeah. So this is where the LLM responded. The user want to query contact data from ADLS. Let me first check what's in the current directory. So it looked at my current directory. It found that okay, there's a DuckDB, and then there's a DuckDB skill, and it then started looking at that skill. So all of this is, you see, published as a function. Okay, so this is where it is able to recognize that skill, and then it, based on the reasoning, then it evaluated the skill. From the skill, it got the instructions, then it completed those instructions step by step, and then we got, let's see, right. So this is where I asked that give me the records where name contain Yates. Okay, you see, this is what it did behind the scene. It invoked the function, and then the LLM constructed this query for me behind the scene. And yeah, and then it found the records, and these are the records that returned, and that's what the CLI gave it to us, right? So that's the content it gave back. You see, the content is in the markdown format, so it's rendered correctly in the Copilot CLI. Okay, yeah. So that's what I wanted to cover in today's session. Now you can, if you run out of tokens from your personal subscription, you can use um, open source models also. So the good thing with the GitHub Copilot CLI is it allows you to bring your own key where you can configure your own models that you have purchased, or you can hook up Olama and then connect to its OpenAI compatible endpoints, which would allow you to run local LLMs and then connect your GitHub Copilot CLI to local LLMs rather than connecting it to the GitHub provided models. So, if you're interested in knowing more about the open source models and how to connect them with the GitHub Copilot CLI, let me know and I'll create a video for it. Yeah. Thank you. Take care. Bye.